Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The first pull. The first grab wasn't soft. A sharp tug yanked her backward, forcing her head to jerk as her braided hair strained beneath the collar of her shirt. Books slipped from her hands and thudded onto the cold hallway floor. The sound echoed, but no one stopped. A teacher passed by. He looked, paused, then turned the other way. Typical. Marcy stood frozen, her jaw tight, her knuckles white around the single spiral notebook she still clutched like a lifeline. Behind her, 3 girls stood, taller, louder, crueler, in matching maroon jackets and perfectly lip-glossed sneers. "Where you going, Roach?" Tamika whispered in her ear, the words stretched out like syrup, slow and poisonous. "You think walking through our hallway with that ugly little face is brave?" Laughter erupted behind her, not just from the girls, but from others. Students, bystanders, boys with earbuds, girls in packs pretending not to see but smiling anyway. This was the ritual, the performance, and today's audience was bigger than usual. Marcy didn't move. She stared down at her fallen books like they weren't hers, like if she looked long enough, maybe they'd vanish. Maybe she would. "You heard her," barked Destiny, another member of Tamika's trio of terror. "Answer when someone's talking to you." Another tug, harder this time. Marcy felt the collar of her thrift store shirt dig into her throat. A thread snapped. A button popped loose and bounced under a locker. Something inside her cracked with it. Still, Marcy said nothing. She never did. She hadn't spoken at school in 3 months, not since the funeral, not since her mom died. And her world broke into 1,000 slivers that no one cared to pick up, especially not here, Jefferson High, where silence wasn't golden. It was blood in the water. They hated her for being quiet. They hated her for being black, but not the right kind. They hated her skin, her thrifted clothes, her shyness, her broken home. But more than anything, they hated her strength. The quiet, kind, the type that refused to beg. Tamika leaned in again. "You think you're better than us, huh? You think that dead mom of yours gives you a pass to act all ghostly and mysterious? Girl, you ain't special. You're just a freak." A hush fell. Even Destiny seemed caught off guard by that one. Marcy's hands clenched. Her mother's voice came flooding in, soft, warm, the way it used to be on Saturday mornings when they baked banana bread before the illness, before the hair fell out before the machines. "Don't let them shape you, baby," she used to whisper. "You get to decide what you become." Her eyes lifted slowly and locked onto Tamika's, and for the first time in 3 months, Marcy spoke, very softly, very clearly. "Get off me." Tamika blinked. "What did you say?" Marcy raised her chin. Her voice didn't waver. "Let go of my collar." Destiny and Kea exchanged wide-eyed looks. Someone gasped from a nearby locker. A phone camera lit up. Tamika chuckled. "Oh, hell no! You found your little voice, huh?" She shoved Marcy backward, but Marcy didn't stumble. She stood. Tamika stepped forward, hand lifting, about to slap, punch, claw, who knows? And that's when Marcy did something no one expected. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She smiled, just slightly. Then she reached down, calmly, picked up her book from the floor, and slammed it down on her own foot. Hard. The hallway went silent. Tamika stepped back, confused. "What the—" Marcy didn't stop. She grabbed another, a thick textbook, and threw it at her own locker door. Clang! Then she screamed. Not a scream of fear, a performance scream. She twisted around, wild-eyed, and pointed directly at Tamika and her crew. "Why are you hitting me?" "Stop! I said stop!" Phones flew out of pockets, doors opened, teachers came running. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and in that moment, with mascara running down Tamika's stunned face and Destiny frozen mid-scoff, Marcy transformed. Not the shy, quiet orphan girl anymore. Not the ghost floating through grief, but someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The principal stormed over. "What's going on here?" Marcy fell to her knees, voice shaking now. This part wasn't fake. It was real. From her core, they grabbed me. I said stop and I didn't know what to do. She sobbed. One teacher knelt beside her. Another guided Tamika away. No, she's lying, Tamika shouted. She hit herself. She's crazy. But it was too late. Marcy had played the game and won the round. She was called into the nurse's office, then the counselors, then the vice principals. When her aunt arrived to pick her up, she didn't ask questions, just drove quietly. Marcy sat in the passenger seat, breathing hard, fingers trembling. Her aunt finally spoke. You okay, baby? Marcy nodded, but she wasn't okay. She was awake, and something had shifted. That night, she opened a shoebox from the back of her closet. Inside, her mom's journal, hidden beneath it, a flash drive. She'd found it the week after the funeral, wedged in the lining of her mother's purse. No name on it, no label. But she never looked at it. Not until now. She plugged it into her laptop. There was one video file titled simply, Play Me Baby. Her heart thudded. She clicked it. Her mother appeared on screen, younger, healthier, wearing a red scarf and that crooked little smile Marcy used to love. Hi, sweetheart. If you're watching this, I'm gone. But don't cry just yet. Okay, because there's something I never told you. The woman glanced off screen, then leaned in, whispering, I had a secret life, and you're going to finish what I couldn't. The flash drive and the red door. Marcy didn't sleep that night. She sat frozen in the blue glow of her laptop, the flash drive still plugged in, her mother's face still lingering on the screen. I had a secret life, and you're going to finish what I couldn't. Her mother had been a lunch lady, a seamstress on weekends, a single mom fighting stage 4 breast cancer. What secret life? What was she talking about? The video continued. Her mother leaned in close, her eyes sharp in a way Marcy had never seen before. You know how I used to tell you that people aren't always who they seem? That sometimes even the ones smiling at you are hiding knives behind their backs? I meant it, Marcy swallowed. There are files on this drive. Not just this message, real stuff, dangerous stuff. I kept it from you because I didn't want you pulled into it. But if I'm gone, maybe that means someone made sure of it. And if that's the case, her mother paused, glanced over her shoulder like someone might burst in, then you need to be careful. And you need to go to the red door. You'll know what I mean when you see it. But you can't trust anyone, not even family, not even her. The screen went black. Marcy stared at her reflection in the screen for a long time. Her breathing was shaky. Her heart was hammering like it wanted out. She clicked on the folder labeled Locked for Marcy Only. It asked for a password. She tried Mom. Marcy. Her birthday. Nothing worked. Then she remembered the phrase her mom always whispered, before bed, back before the coughing started. The one that never made sense but always sounded warm and secret. Glass don't break unless it's meant to. She typed, glass don't break, click. It opened. Inside, 5 files, 4 PDFs, 1 audio recording. The PDFs were scans of documents. Old, grainy, some with government letterheads. Birth certificates, medical records, surveillance photos of people Marcy didn't recognize. The names were redacted, the places too. But a few things stood out. A handwritten note on one of the documents said, they're using the foster program to hide them. Another file had a map with a red pin marked just a few blocks from where Marcy lived now, near the river, by the old warehouse district. She opened the audio file. It was her mother's voice again, but not soft this time. This voice was frantic, panicked. If anything happens to me, it's not cancer. They're going to say it is, but it's not. I was getting too close. I saw what they were doing at the audio cut off. Marcy stared at the screen, the silence ringing in her ears. Her mom was trying to warn her from beyond the grave. The next morning, Marcy walked through school like a ghost in reverse, alive for the first time in months. She didn't stop to flinch at whispers, didn't look away when Tamika and Destiny glared at her from across the cafeteria. Tamika now had a 3-day suspension on her record, and her father was threatening to sue the school. But what could they prove? No bruises, no punches, just a scared girl's voice on a dozen TikTok videos saying, "They hit me?" Marcy knew she'd win that battle. But now there was a war she didn't understand. After school, she didn't go home. She walked to the warehouse district instead. The area near the river used to be busy. Factories, workshops, loading docks. Now it was just rust and broken glass. Marcy followed the pin from the map in the PDF. She passed buildings with shattered windows, graffiti-sprayed walls, and weeds as tall as her waist. Then she saw it, a small brick structure, crumbling at the edges with one feature that made her stop cold, a red metal door, the only red one in the row. She walked up slowly. Her fingers brushed the surface. Cold, painted over many times, but the shape of a small handprint could still be seen at the bottom corner, faint, like a child once touched it long ago. She knocked. Silence. She knocked again, louder this time. The key. Door creaked open. Inside, darkness. Dust. The sharp scent of rusted metal and oil. She stepped in. At first, she couldn't see anything. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she saw the table. On it, papers, Polaroids, a corkboard on the wall with strings connecting photos of people she didn't recognize. In the center, a large photo of a girl. It was her, taken from a distance. At school, wearing the same jacket she wore yesterday, and scrawled across the photo in red ink, "Next." Marcy's stomach dropped. She backed away from the table, heart thundering, and turned to run. But someone was already at the door. Woman mid-30s, African-American, wearing a grey trench coat, a badge half hidden under her collar. "You shouldn't be here," the woman said. "Who are you?" Marcy asked, breathless. The woman didn't answer right away. Then she stepped into the room and closed the red door behind her. "I worked with your mother," she said quietly. "What do you mean, worked with?" "My mom was a cover," the woman said. "Lunch lady by day, investigator by night. She uncovered something buried deep in this city, something tied to kids disappearing from foster care, others being placed in homes where they were never seen again. She died before she could publish anything. She died of cancer." The woman looked at her, long and silent. Then, "That's what the death certificate says, and I suppose that makes it easier, but we both know she didn't just get sick out of nowhere." Marcy's knees felt weak. "I don't understand. Why would someone want to hurt her? Because she found names, real names, people in power, ones who'd kill to keep secrets buried. And why me? Why now?" The woman walked over to the corkboard, pointed at Marcy's photo. "Because they think she left everything to you. And they're right." Marcy's chest ached. "But I'm just a kid," she whispered. "No," the woman said. "You're her daughter, which means you're exactly who they should be afraid of." Outside, a car idled quietly. Inside it, a man with pale eyes and a face like winter watched the warehouse. He spoke into a phone. She found the red door. A pause. "Yes, I'm sure. We need to move now before she starts digging." Another pause. Then, "Take care of the girl, and anyone who helps her." Back in the warehouse, Marcy leaned closer to the board. "What's this?" she asked, pointing to a photo of a young woman in a hospital gown, her eyes blurred out with black marker. The woman in the trench coat hesitated. "That is your sister." Marcy reeled. "My what?" "She's older. Your mother had her before you, gave her up at birth to protect her. But when she started digging into this case again, she realized your sister might be involved, maybe even taken." Marcy stared at the face. The girl had her chin, her curls, something familiar in the jawline. "Where is she now?" The woman hesitated. "We don't know. She disappeared 6 months ago." Marcy felt the floor shifting beneath her. "I have a sister," she whispered, "and she's missing." The red door creaked again. The woman turned suddenly. "Did you hear that?" Before Marcy could answer, the window shattered. A canister clattered across the floor, gas hissing out. "Tear gas!" the woman shouted. "Down!" Marcy dove behind the table, coughing. The door flew open. Footsteps, shouting, gunshots. The woman screamed. Marcy reached for the flash drive, yanked it from her pocket, and crawled toward the back, gas stinging her eyes, toward the emergency. Hatch half covered in crates. She pushed, crawled, squeezed through the tiny opening, her jeans ripping on the way out. Outside, the alley was dark. She ran, fast, hard. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. Somewhere behind her, the warehouse went up in flames. She didn't stop running until she reached the park, breathless, crying, holding the flash drive like it was her mother's hand. She sat on the swing, shaking, barefoot and bleeding, but alive, and suddenly she wasn't just a girl anymore. She was a target, she was a witness, and maybe, just maybe, she was also a weapon. The sister in the shadows. The sky was bleeding orange when Marcy finally stopped running. Her socks were soaked with dew, her legs trembling, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. Somewhere behind her, smoke curled into the sky. The red door, the last place her mother had ever pointed her to, was now gone, burned down, buried like the truth. She sat on the edge of a bench in Lincoln Park, surrounded by joggers and dog walkers who moved through. The evening haze like nothing had changed, but everything had. In her right pocket, she still clutched the flash drive. In her left, a piece of crumpled paper she'd torn from the warehouse wall before escaping. Her own photo, with one word written in thick red marker. Next. She didn't go home that night. Instead, she walked, nowhere in particular, until the sun was long gone and her body felt like glass about to shatter. Then she ended up on the front steps of the only place that ever made her feel slightly safe, Mrs. Edna's house, her old piano teacher from 3rd grade. A quiet widow with hands soft like cotton and a kitchen that always smelled like ginger and apple cider. Marcy didn't even knock. She just sat on the steps, trying not to cry, until the porch light flicked on and the door opened. "Marcy Johnson," Mrs. Edna said softly, in that same voice she used when correcting wrong notes. "What have you gotten yourself into, child?" Inside, wrapped in a quilt and sipping hot tea, Marcy finally broke. She told her everything, not all the details, but enough. The flash drive, the files, the fire, the woman who claimed to know her mom, the photo of the girl with her same face. Mrs. Edna didn't say much, but her eyes narrowed at certain points. And when Marcy said the word sister, the older woman's lips parted slightly, as if she knew. "She never told me she had another child," Edna whispered. "But your mother had scars, not just the ones on her body. Some you could feel in the room, even when she smiled." "You think it's true?" Marcy asked. "That I have a sister?" Mrs. Edna stared at her for a long time. Then she got up, disappeared down the hall, and returned with a dusty photo album. She flipped to a yellowing page and handed it to Marcy. The photo was old, a teenage girl holding a newborn. Marcy's mom, young, maybe 16, eyes wide with fear but soft with love. "That's her," Edna said. "And that's not you. You weren't born until years later." The baby in her mother's arms had a hospital tag on her wrist. Scrawled faintly, "Baby girl J, 7:41 a.m. The next day, Marcy returned to her apartment to find the door wide open, not broken, just unlocked, inviting. Inside, nothing was missing, nothing was broken, but everything had been moved. Subtle things. Her. School books misaligned, a jacket that used to hang by the door now folded over the couch. The TV slightly tilted. Someone had been here. She searched her mother's old drawer, the one she rarely opened, and found a torn envelope stuffed in the back. Inside, a birth certificate. Not hers. Name, Jade Laney. Jackson. Mother, Celeste Jackson. Father, unknown Jade. The name cracked something open in Marcy's chest. The certificate had no hospital name, just the date. Her sister was real, and her name was Jade. That night, Marcy sat cross-legged on the floor of her bedroom with the flash drive plugged into her laptop again. She went through the files, this time slower, searching for Jade. In one file titled Clearance A, she found a photo. It was blurry and shadowy, taken from a distance. A girl standing on the steps of a facility that looked like a group home or mental ward. The name on the sign, Ashmore Behavioral Institute. Below the photo was a typed note. Subject transferred 6-2. Changed ID to Julia Ray. Monitored under sedation protocol. Visitations restricted. A different name, Julia Ray Jade, had been taken, renamed and moved. Why, what had she seen? Marcy Googled Ashmore Behavioral Institute. It was 3 towns over, rural area, off the main highway. She could get there, but not alone. The next morning, she went to the only person she hated enough to need right now, Elijah Bennett. He used to be her neighbor. A few years older, quiet, always fixing his bike or sneaking smokes behind the dumpsters. He and her mom had some kind of deal, free tutoring for Marcy in exchange for food or rides. After her mom died, he vanished. But today, he was back, slouched. Against the auto shop wall, earbuds in, hoodie up. "I need your help," Marcy said, voice flat. He looked at her, unimpressed. "I didn't even say hi yet. I found something about my mom. About someone named Jade. They tried to burn it. They almost killed me." That got his attention. She showed him the flash drive. The photo, the word "next" scribbled across her face. He blinked. "Jesus. I need a ride to Ashmore Institute. I think my sister's there. I can't go alone." Elijah hesitated, then nodded. Tonight. By dusk, they were on the road. Marcy sat in the passenger seat of his beat-up Civic, chewing her nails. She told him everything. The files, the fire, the woman in the trench coat, the gas, the escape. Elijah didn't speak for a long time. Then, finally, "Your mom. She ever mention Project W?" Marcy turned slowly. "What's that?" He glanced at her. "Something she was chasing. That's all I know. She came to my dad once, back when he was still alive, and asked about strange birth records, girls who disappeared, files that didn't match hospital entries. She was scared then too." Marcy whispered, "What happened to your dad?" Elijah tightened his jaw. "He helped her. Then he disappeared." Marcy stared at the road ahead. "Then we both lost parents to the same shadows." Ashmore was hidden behind gates and fences, surrounded by trees that looked like they hadn't heard laughter in years. Elijah parked a block away. They slipped through a loose section of the fence. Marcy's breath caught in her throat when she saw the place up close. Grey walls, barred windows, a sadness that poured out of the bricks. They crept to the back, where a small loading bay offered a cracked window just wide enough to slip through. Inside, the hallway smelled like bleach and dust. They moved silently, following the soft hum of flickering lights, room after room, locked until they found room 214. A clipboard outside read, "Ray, Julia Code 7B, nonverbal, risk of trauma recall." Marcy pressed her face to the glass. Inside, bare bed, white sheets, metal sink, no photos, and on the bed curled up a girl, dark skin. Tight curls, thin frame. Even from here, Marcy could feel the resemblance. It was her, Jade. She knocked softly. The girl didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned, and Marcy saw her own eyes staring back at her, wide, broken, and filled with something. Between fear and recognition, they just stared at each other, a mirror split by fate. Then alarms, blaring, red lights flashing, voices shouting down the hall. Someone tripped the west sensor. "Check room 214, now!" Elijah grabbed her wrist. "We have to go!" Marcy looked at her sister one last time and whispered through the glass, I'm coming back for you." Then they ran. Outside, Elijah's car roared to life. They sped into the night, chased by sirens and the rising scent of fear. Inside the glove box, Marcy held the clipboard she'd yanked from the wall. She flipped it over and found a handwritten note. "Transferred to Vault Facility 12B, authorized by Dr. Kinney." And below that, a symbol, two triangles overlapping in a broken circle. Marcy stared at it. "I've seen this before," she murmured. "Where?" "On one of the files in the flash drive, the folder named Project W." Elijah glanced at her. "What the hell is Project W?" Marcy whispered. "I think it's where they made her." The truth beneath the glass. The roads blurred past the windshield, but Marcy saw none of it. Her fingers trembled as she held the clipboard from room 214, reading the name over and over. Dr. Kinney, Vault Facility, 12B, Jade's last known transfer. Her sister, drugged, silenced, locked away, wasn't just lost. She had been taken. "This isn't a hospital," Marcy whispered. "It's a prison." Elijah gripped the wheel tighter. "You really think this Project W, whatever it is, they're still running it?" Marcy stared out the window. "They burned a building down with me inside. So yeah, I think they'll do anything to keep it quiet." He didn't argue. He didn't have to. They both knew this had stopped being just about family. They drove through the night until they reached an old motel near the state border. Rosepine Inn, half-burned neon sign flickering like a dying star. Inside the room, under dim yellow lights and the hum of a broken fridge, Marcy opened the flash drive again. This time, she wasn't just skimming. She was hunting. Inside the Project W folder, buried under medical files and strange acronyms, she found it, a video file, half-corrupted but still playable. She clicked. The screen came to life. A girl strapped to a metal chair, her face pixelated, her arms bruised. A doctor's voice. Subject: 9. Cognitive Response Trial 3B, proceeding with memory flash injection. The girl began to scream, words that made no sense, symbols, codes, names. Then the camera zoomed in just before the screen cut to black. The last frame froze, and Marcy saw it, just beneath the girl's chin, a faded hospital bracelet. Jade Laney Jackson. She clutched her mouth. Elijah turned pale. "Oh, what the hell is this?" "Not a hospital," Marcy whispered again. "A lab." Later that night, Elijah crept out for supplies. Marcy couldn't sleep. She lay on the scratchy motel bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of everything threatening to crush her. Then her burner phone vibrated. Unknown number, one message: "Stop digging. You're next." Kay. Her blood ran cold. Dr. Kinney. She wanted to throw the phone, but she didn't. Instead, she stared at the message until her fear turned into something sharper. Focus. By dawn, Elijah had tracked down a name. His cousin worked at a data center and managed to pull a list of old medical contractors connected to Ashmore Behavioral and Vault Facility locations. One name came up 5 times. Dr. Evelyn Kinney, former neurologist. Terminated license, no address on record, last known affiliation, the Valen Initiative, a biotech front company dissolved 8 years ago. She disappeared off-grid after her lab got shut down, Elijah said. Rumors of unethical research, brainwave testing on unregistered minors. You think she's behind Project W? Marcy nodded. She signed the transfer order for Jade. Elijah's phone buzzed. He looked down. We've got a hit. What kind? A place. Not exactly Vault 12B, but it's tied to Kinney through a shell company. A private clinic in Coldwater County, only accessible through the backwoods. No map pin. What's it called? He showed her the screen. Stellaris Center for Neurobehavioral Study. Marcy's stomach dropped. Coldwater. That name was in the flash drive too, she whispered. She took her there. They drove for 6 hours through endless fields and barren roads until they reached Coldwater County. A sign read, Population 1403. trust few. It looked like a town frozen in time. Rusted gas stations, churches with cracked stained glass, and stores that hadn't updated their signs since the 90s. Everyone watched them as they passed. Like the new, at a dusty diner off Main Street, they asked a waitress about Stellaris. Her smile vanished. "Closed down years ago," she said. "But do you know where it was?" Marcy asked. The woman hesitated, then scribbled something on a napkin. "Drive past Miller Creek. Take the old service road behind the grain silo. Don't stay long." The road turned to gravel, then to dirt. Trees closed in on either side like jaws. And then it appeared. An iron gate, half fallen, surrounded by barbed wire. Beyond it, a building made of white stone and steel, its walls cracked and windows dark. But the power was still running. A soft, humming buzz came from deep within. They climbed through a hole in the fence and crept around to a broken side door. Inside, the air smelled of ammonia and rust. Medical papers still lay on. Counters, straps hung from gurneys. Ceiling lights flickered as if woken from a long sleep. Marcy's breath fogged in the cold air. She knew this was where they broke her sister. In the central corridor, they found a keypad-locked door marked Vault Wing, Level 2. Marcy's fingers hovered over the numbers. She tried her mother's birthdays. Then Jade's. Nothing. Then she remembered a pattern from the flash drive. Code 7B. She typed it. The door clicked open. Inside, a staircase leading down into the dark. They descended step by step until they reached a basement hallway. The walls were covered in steel. Red lights glowed above each door, all locked except the last one. Marcy pushed it open and found the room glass panels, medical restraints, a projector, and on the far wall, photos. Dozens of them, all girls, some smiling, some crying, some bruised, and among them her, Marcy, labeled Subject 13, Variant Alpha. Her knees gave out. She dropped to the floor. "I was one of them." Elijah helped her up, panic rising. "What does that mean? You were tested too." "I don't remember. Marcy choked on her own breath. "My mom, maybe she got me out before they started." Then she saw a black notebook beneath the desk. She opened it. Dr. Kinney's journal. "We confirmed both subjects have full compatibility. Twins, separated at birth for safety. One raised in normalcy, one retained for observation. Subject 13 shows adaptive empathy. Subject 9 exhibits high sensory resistance but severe dissociation. Twins." Not just sisters twins, one abandoned in the system, one kept hidden in the world. To see how they'd develop differently, a real-life experiment. Footsteps. Heavy down the hallway, they froze. A flashlight beam swept across the wall. Elijah pulled her behind a cabinet. Voices. Room still intact. "She was here. She has the files. Bring her to Kinney. Now." Marcy's pulse screamed. Elijah pulled open a vent. They climbed in just as Boots entered the room. Through the slats, she saw two men in black uniforms. One held a tranquilizer gun. The other held a photo. Her face, again. "Find her." They crawled through the vents until they reached the far end of the building and dropped down into a back hall. The exit was blocked. Elijah grabbed a fire extinguisher and smashed through the side window. They tumbled out, scraped and breathless. The forest swallowed them again. They ran for miles until Coldwater was just a whisper behind them. At a safe house Elijah knew, an abandoned ranger cabin, they barricaded the door and finally breathed. Marcy clutched the journal. Every page was worse than the last. Experiments on children, memory, tempering drug protocols, and at the bottom of the last page, execute memory wipe of Subject 13 by June 12th. Ensure Subject 9 does not reach language recall. Both assets compromised. Terminate if exposed. Today was June 11th, Marcy whispered. They plan to erase me. Elijah looked shaken. "You think they can do that?" She stared at the ceiling. "They already did. I just remembered nothing. But my body remembers, my nightmares, all these years. I thought they were just dreams. She turned the page one last time. A photo slipped out. A younger Dr. Kinney, smiling with her arm around Marcy's mom, and in the background, 2 cribs, labeled 9 and 13. Suddenly the burner phone buzzed again, a video link. Marcy clicked it. The screen flickered, then lit up with a feed from a sterile white room. Jade, strapped to a chair, eyes glassy, barely conscious, and a voice, off camera. "You want her back? Come alone. No Elijah, no files, just you." Then the screen cut to black. Walk into the fire. The cabin was so still, it felt like time had stopped. Marcy stood in the doorway, fingers trembling around the burner phone. The video had stopped playing 5 minutes ago, but the image was still burned into her mind. Jade, strapped down, barely conscious. Elijah was pacing. "No, absolutely not. You are not going alone." She didn't look at him. "I have to." "That's exactly what they want. You think they'll just hand her over and let you walk away? Marcy, this is a kill order disguised as a rescue." Her voice came low, measured. "I'm not going to save myself." He stopped. Marcy turned, eyes shining. She was the one they kept, drugged, cut off from the world. She was always the one left behind. If I don't go now, she dies wondering if I ever cared. "You think she's even—" He stopped himself. "I'm sorry." Marcy walked over to the bag on the floor, unzipped it, and pulled out the flash drive, Kinney's journal, and the hard copies of everything they'd collected. "Take this," she said, handing him the bag. "If I don't make it back, go. To the press. Expose all of it, even if no one believes you." He shook his head. She looked at him. "Promise me, Elijah." His jaw clenched. "I promise." The meeting point was sent at 3 a.m., a GPS coordinate deep in the forest, just north of Coldwater. She arrived just before dawn. It was colder than it should have been, silent, not even bird song. The place was an old ranger clearing with a concrete outpost building in the center, one single flickering light. No guards, no cameras, just the hum of danger in the air. She stepped into the clearing, hands up. "I'm here," she called out. From the shadows, a voice answered. "I told you to come alone. Are you?" Marcy nodded. The door creaked open. Woman stepped out, lab coat, silver-gray hair, thin frame, but with eyes like steel. Dr. Evelyn Kinney, alive and smiling. "Well," Kinney said. "You're braver than your file suggested." Marcy stared her down. "Where's my sister?" Kinney gestured to the doorway. "Inside, still alive, for now." Marcy took a breath and walked toward her. Inside, the building was surgical, walls scrubbed clean, equipment humming. Kinney led her down a hallway until they reached a sealed room. Behind a glass partition, Jade, strapped to a table, eyes closed. "She's sedated," Kinney said, "but stable for now." Marcy's voice cracked. "Why her? Why me?" Kinney turned to her. "Because your mother made a deal. You don't remember it. Your memories were sanitized, but she gave us one child. A trade." Marcy blinked. "What?" "She had powers of her own, not supernatural, just dangerous knowledge. She worked in research with us before she ran. Before she got pregnant with the twins." Marcy's mouth went dry. "You mean to tell me my mother knew about all of this?" "She was one of our brightest minds. She helped design the cognitive imprinting program." Kinney stepped closer. "You were meant to be test subjects together, but your mother betrayed us. She fled, faked your deaths, raised you off-grid. We found her eventually. She offered Jade to protect you." Marcy staggered back. "No. She chose which one to keep. Don't blame me. Blame her." "No," Marcy said again, louder now. "You're lying." Kinney smiled, cold. I? Behind her, Jade stirred on the table. Marcy ran to the glass, pressed her hands against it. "Jade! Jade! I'm here!" Jade's eyes fluttered open, then widened in fear. She mouthed something. "Run!" Marcy spun, just as a needle jabbed into her neck. Kinney's voice was the last thing she heard before the blackness swallowed her. "Let's finish what we started." When Marcy awoke, her arms were strapped to a chair. Just like Jade in the footage, a floodlight beamed down on her. Kinney stood behind a control panel, calm as ever. "Do you remember anything from your early childhood?" she asked softly. "Any flashes? Shadows?" Marcy gritted her teeth. "I remember what monsters look like." Kinney ignored her. "We found something extraordinary in you. A rare neural synchronization. It's why you and Jade matter. Your minds connect across time, even space. We've only scratched the surface of what that could mean for memory transfer, for mind healing, for control." Marcy spat blood onto the floor. "That's all we are to you? Lab rats?" "No," Kinney said quietly. "You're legacies. And it's time you remembered who you were meant to be." She flipped a switch. A low hum started. Screens lit up around Marcy's chair, images flashing rapidly. A beach, a crib, screaming, needles, Jade crying. It was all crashing back like waves. A voice in her head screamed, Jade's voice, "Marcy!" Their minds touched, a thread of pain and light between them. She wasn't alone. Then something broke. The lights flickered. Kinney frowned, tapped a panel. "No," she muttered. "Not now." Suddenly, boom! The back wall exploded. Elijah burst in, wielding a fire axe and a flare. "Get away from her!" Chaos erupted. Kinney screamed, reaching for a syringe, but Marcy, fueled by adrenaline, twisted her arms free from the restraint and lunged forward. She tackled Kinney hard to the floor. The syringe rolled away. Elijah was already at Jade's side, unstrapping her. Jade slumped, dazed, into his arms. Marcy stood over Kinney, panting. "I remember enough now," she said. Kinney looked up, bruised but defiant. "You'll regret this. You don't know what they'll do to you once the truth comes out. We'll take our chances." Marcy raised the syringe and slammed it into the panel behind her. Electric sparks burst everywhere. The chair shorted out. The system went dark. Jade gasped and spoke her first words in days. "Marcy?" Marcy turned to her, tears falling freely now. "I'm here, Jade. I'm here." They ran through the ruined corridor, out into the forest. Where dawn was breaking, Kinney didn't follow. She was still alive, but the project wasn't, not anymore. They had evidence now. They had names, files, a full confession. Elijah handed Jade the burner phone. "We're going public." Jade nodded slowly. "Let's burn it down." That night they uploaded everything, every file, every video, every name to journalists, lawyers, activists, every major outlet. They didn't wait to be believed. They forced the world to look. In the weeks that followed, Project W was exposed. Dr. Evelyn Kinney disappeared. Wanted by federal authorities, Ashmore Behavioral was shut down for serious ethical violations. And hundreds of families came forward, recognizing the faces of girls in the files. Some found closure. Some demanded justice. But for Marcy and Jade, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about becoming whole again. One morning, weeks later, the twins stood at the grave of their mother. The truth still stung, that she had chosen, that she had lied, but she had also fought in her own way. "She tried to protect us," Jade whispered. Marcy nodded. "And now it's our turn." They held hands and walked away, together. The truth beneath everything. The sky was soft grey as the storm broke over cold water. Marcy sat by the window of the safe house, listening to the rain tapping the glass. It had been 3 months since they escaped, 3 months since the world learned the truth, 3 months since Kinney vanished. And yet, nothing about this felt over. She turned when she heard quiet footsteps. Jade walked in, wrapped in a blanket, her face thinner, but her eyes clearer than they'd ever been. "You didn't sleep," Marcy said. "I keep dreaming about the lab," Jade murmured. "But this time I wake up and know I'm free." Marcy reached over, touched her hand. They sat in silence, Two survivors trying to breathe in a world that no longer felt foreign, but didn't quite feel like home either. Later that day, Elijah showed up with a folder in his hands and a grim expression. "You should see this." He spread out printouts of an anonymous report that had just surfaced on an encrypted forum. It was detailed, specific, an insider's account of Project W's second site. "What's second site?" Jade asked, her voice tightening. Marcy frowned. "We thought Kinney ran everything from Coldwater." Elijah shook his head. "This says Coldwater was just one wing of the program. There was another, one even more classified, and according to this whistleblower, it's still active." Marcy leaned closer. "Where?" "Argentina." A cold silence settled over the room. Jade's jaw clenched. "So, it's not over?" Marcy nodded slowly. "No, it's just gone deeper underground." That night, Marcy stood alone in the rain. She stared at the stars breaking through the clouds. She should have felt victorious. She should have felt healed. Instead, she felt watched. She turned and found a woman in a black raincoat standing just outside the tree line. Not Kinney, taller, younger, but the same piercing eyes. "Who are you?" Marcy called out. The woman didn't answer. She held up a flash. "Drive," wrapped in plastic. Marcy took a step forward, but the woman had already dropped it on the ground and turned into the woods. Gone. Marcy picked it up. Back inside, Elijah decrypted it. The screen flickered. There were hundreds of files, videos, photos, test results, names, and one document labeled Genesis Protocol. Jade leaned over the screen, brows furrowed. "What's Genesis?" Marcy opened the file. Phase 1, emotional. Fragmentation. Phase 2, sibling separation. Phase 3, reunification through shared trauma. Phase 4, final convergence. Subject group, Marcy and Jade Turner. Status incomplete. Final phase. Pending external trigger. The room went still. "What the hell is this?" Elijah asked. Marcy whispered, "We thought we escaped, but we were never meant to," Jade finished. For the next few days, they studied every file on the drive. It showed that Project W wasn't just about memory or control. It was part of a larger psychological experiment, one that wanted to break and rebuild human empathy by manufacturing trauma between twins. And Marcy and Jade were subjects 001A and 001B, the first of their kind. The others had either died, vanished, or lost their minds. Elijah found one surviving name, Avery Lynn, another twin subject who had reportedly vanished years ago, but there was a flagged note attached to her file. Escaped, presumed unstable, do not contact. So, of course, Marcy contacted her. Avery met them 2 weeks later in a rundown cafe in Chicago. She was thin, haunted-looking, with shaking hands, but her mind was sharp. "They lied to you about how it ended," she said, without preamble. "They never shut it down. They just shifted. You were meant to survive because they wanted to study how survivors rebuild." "That's phase 4, Jade blinked. "They let us go?" Avery nodded. "It was never escape, it was release. You're still inside their game. They've just moved the walls." Elijah leaned forward. "So what do we do?" Avery gave a ghost of a smile. "You don't play by their rules. You burn the game board." And that's what they did. For the next month, Marcy, Jade, Elijah, and Avery formed their own underground network. They called it The Undoing. They tracked whispers of other survivors. They located orphaned files. They hacked into secure channels and leaked evidence every week. The media didn't cover all of it. Too risky. But online they were building a storm. Then one night a package arrived. No return address. No note. Inside, a black envelope with a single word. Run. Marcy turned the card over. It had coordinates. Same region as their safe house. Elijah was already locking the doors and grabbing gear. "We need to go. Now." They fled within 30 minutes, and 10 hours later, news broke that the safe house had been destroyed in a gas explosion. They weren't meant to survive that night. They moved in secret, country to country, changing names, but everywhere they went, others began reaching out, other survivors, former techs, even one retired government agent. The truth was spreading faster than Kinney could suppress it, until finally, a video was leaked. Kinney herself. It was grainy, taken secretly, but unmistakable. She was in a private clinic in Brazil, recovering from a medical procedure. No security, no guards. They debated it all night. And then, Marcy made the call. We finished this. They arrived in Brazil under false identities. Avery stayed behind to coordinate the takedown campaign if things went wrong. Elijah hacked the clinic system, and Marcy and Jade, for the first time since childhood, walked side by side into the lion's den. Kinney didn't even flinch when they entered her room. Her face was paler, her voice weaker, but her mind sharp as ever. I suppose I should be surprised, she said. Jade crossed her arms. You should be terrified. I'm dying, Kinney replied. What more could you do to me? Marcy stepped closer. Tell us the truth. All of it. Now. Kinney looked between them. You want the full truth? Fine. She coughed, then smiled faintly. You were never meant to be weapons or victims. You were meant to be blueprints. The next generation of emotional architecture, your pain, your survival. It proves that suffering doesn't destroy humanity. It refines it. That was the Genesis protocol. Jade's voice was a razor. You ruined lives for a theory. And the world will build empires from it, Kinney whispered. Marcy pulled out her phone. That's all we needed, she pressed. Upload. Everything Kinney just said went live, broadcast to thousands of subscribers worldwide, live-streamed from a hidden mic. Kinney paled. We learned from the best, Marcy said, and now we're teaching the world. 3 months later, the clinic was raided. Kinney was arrested by Interpol. Project W was officially labeled a human rights catastrophe. A global tribunal was formed, and the undoing was credited with one of the most significant civilian-led exposures of the decade. In the final press interview, Marcy stood in front of the camera, Jade at her side. The reporter asked, "What would you say to others who feel like their trauma has broken them?" Marcy smiled softly. "I'd say, maybe it did. Maybe it shattered you, but sometimes the only way to rebuild something stronger is to let it fall apart first." Jade added, "Don't run from what hurt you. Study it. Own it. Then make sure it never happens to anyone else." The world watched and listened. Later that night, the sisters lit a candle outside an old church in Lisbon. They whispered a prayer, not for vengeance, but for peace. They looked up at the stars, like they had as kids. This time, they weren't waiting for a rescue. They were the rescue. Final line. They tried to turn them into victims, but in the end, they became something far more dangerous, the truth that couldn't be buried. The end.